Hello, everyone, and welcome to another BODHI session. Today, we will discuss the rise of agentic commerce and we'll unearth the billion-dollar question. While agentic commerce is here, is CPG and retail industry ready to embrace the change? I am Indrajit Mitra, leading the AI and data science practice at Polestar Analytics, and very happy to host Sathya AG. Sathya is a technology evangelist, a published author, and senior customer cloud architect at Google with more than 19 years of experience in enterprise architecture. He is a fellow of British Computer Society, a senior member of IEEE, featured multiple times at Google Next, Oracle Open World, NRF. He has been a judge for Stevie Cody Awards, and he also serves on the CDAO Circle Advisory Board. I can go on, right? But welcome, Sathya. Welcome to this session.
Thank you so much, Indrajit, for hosting me. It's really a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to this discussion.
Great. Okay. So to start with, Sathya, let us first understand what agentic commerce is really mean for all of us, right? So my first question to you, therefore, is agentic commerce an evolution of e-commerce or a complete reset?
It's a great question. By the way, before we dive in, just wanted to preface by saying the views and opinions that we'll be sharing today are my own and do not necessarily reflect that of Google. Having that out of the way, I think that's a great question. I think this is the question that everybody is asking in the industry. So I specialize in retail and CPG vertical. So I reckon it's a complete reset in the JIT. If you recall, like the mid 90s, right? So e-commerce evolved as an internet platform to digitize the physical store, like the physical catalog of a brick and mortar store, right? That's how it evolved in the internet platform days. Over the last three decades, retailers have been adopting and enhancing web, mobile, and connected devices, right? To kind of enrich that experience. We are now at the next major inflection point, which is the digitization of the shopper itself, right? So in the e-commerce digitized the store, but now agentic commerce is digitizing the shopper. So we are fundamentally moving from like a human experience readable web to a machine like agentic readable web. In the past, we built user interfaces, right? Now API is the UI for agents. We are seeing a major shift from what we know and call user experience to augmented agentic experience like UX to AX, with all the evolutionary protocols that we are seeing like A to UI and AGUI. Primarily, in my opinion, the industry is shifting from like tool-based commerce where we as consumers used to pull all the levers ourselves to an outcome-based execution with agents. So basically, you simply state your intent and a mandate to an agent like, hey, restock my pantry, right, with healthy nut-free snacks under a budget, right? And the agent basically handles the entire workflow for you, like searching, comparison, checkout, and delivery.
Great start. So the next question is, will the commerce, overall commerce, be owned by the platforms, the protocols, or the agents?
In my view, the real power is shifting to the protocol layer at this moment, right, as we speak. Frameworks, platforms, agents will all naturally evolve around some of these foundational protocols, much like how we saw with the evolution of HTTP, right, as a protocol, and we saw the massive convergence around open standards that we'll also see the same that will dictate the flow of like this agent-driven transactions. For instance, you have players like OpenAI and Stripe, right, pushing the Agentic Commerce Protocol, the ACP, which is actually brilliant for handling checkout and payment, right, directly within the chat interfaces. Like you can basically shop from GPT interfaces, right? But on the other hand, you also have open standards that are evolving, like UCP, like Universal Commerce Protocol, championed by leaders like Google, right? We are known for leading the industry with open tools and standards for decades now, right? Which takes a much broader, wider lens to orchestrate the entire commerce lifecycle from the product discovery to all the way, like, for post purchases like returns or concerns. The In my view, the entities that own these foundational machine-to-machine communication standards and protocols will ultimately set the rules for the new digital economy.
Great, great. So in your view, are we moving from, let's say, customer experience to agent experience in some way?
Absolutely, absolutely. As we just discussed earlier, I call it the shift from UX to AX, right? User experience to agent experience. The new customer for you could be a retailer or a grocer or even a QSR, like a quick service restaurant, would be a machine, right? So for the enterprises, this is a very, very critical pivot. So if your brand's data isn't structured for machines to ingest, evaluate, negotiate. And it's not just that, it's at scale and speed, right? That you need as well. You effectively risk becoming invisible in an agentic world, right? So agents are all trying to execute these autonomous transactions. Scale and speed and accuracy of the data is paramount. So it becomes a lot more critical and a massive imperative to build for the new user base, which are the agents.
Great, fascinating, in fact. So in a human journey, the decisions are explicit, right, and effort-driven. In an agentic journey, they are continuous and optimized in the background, right? So if users no longer see, compare, or actively choose products, are they still the decision makers, or they are just the policy setters for their agents? How do you look at it?
That's a great question. So we are absolutely at the cusp of that paradigm shift, right? So we will evolve from being how do I call it, the micromanagers of our shopping carts, right? Whether you shop Amazon or any other retailer website or ordering food. And we will evolve from being micromanagers to becoming governors of our consumption and needs, right? So think of it this way, right? We will set a mandate and guardrails, strategic guardrails for our personal agent, right? So what is our budget? What any ethical filters sustainability, right? And if you have a specific dietary need or you have a preferred delivery window, all of these, the agents basically understand these mandates and set of guardrails, and the agents will execute autonomously within that mandate. So we aren't really losing control. What we will see is we will be trading the friction of these mundane choices, like an everyday shopping thing, for the luxury of delegation, right? So we'll delegate this to the agent. So this allows us to basically reclaim our most valuable asset, which is time, right? Instead of spending the cognitive energy on routine everyday purchases, we can reallocate the focus towards what truly matters, high consideration decisions, right? Or the experiences that actually bring value.
Great. So that probably raises another question, that where should that boundary be, right? So where should the boundary lie between the human control and the agent autonomy? Should users approve every decision or trust agents to execute end to end?
Okay, that's a great question. I believe we'll see a tiered approach, right? So what I just said is it is how it will evolve, but I think we will most likely see a tiered approach based on the risk value proposition, right? For routine low risk replenishing or purchases, let's say ordering paper towels, right, or restocking a pantry or an inventory, we will grant agents full autonomy, right? So they will handle everything from purchase to payments without any human intervention that's required, right? Because it'll operate within that mandate and the set of guardrails, right? However, for high emotion or high ticket items, right, the agents will be designed with a human in the loop escalation path. So the agent will perform the heavy lifting of discovery and comparison, right? So even for those high ticket items. For instance, let's say we're in spring, right? Let's say we are planning a family a trip, right, for the upcoming spring break. And the agent would basically find the top three flight options that fit within a budget, right? That can include airline preferences, the schedule. For hotels, it can give you a few top hotel or Airbnb choices in the area based on like loyalty preferences that you have, right, and a budget, and maybe a list of things to do, right? And we are already doing that in terms of like, hey, I do this with agents. Like I can go to Gemini and ask, hey, plan my trip. I'm going here, and I have this is how my family is. I have two kids, right, and ages 15 and 8. So it basically knows the family structure, and it can plan around that activity level and interest, right? So, but we'll ultimately present those curated choices and options back to the human, right, for the final definitive approval.
Great, great. So if the agents, let's say, remove all friction from decision making, right? Do we risk losing critical thinking, the deliberation, and even the satisfaction from the buying process?
Yeah, so I think I'm glad you asked this. So that's like the $1 trillion question. So I think when the commerce basically goes invisible, right, so to speak, so trust is paramount, right, and it becomes the actual product. So if we just ask the agent and the agent buys like a wrong product, right, like in the enterprise context, let's say it buys the wrong enterprise software license, or like books like a non-refundable ticket, for example, on the wrong flight, right? Who owns that mistake is the biggest question. This is precisely where we are as an industry shifting, right, from probabilistic AI function towards like a more deterministic proof-based model, right? And accountability is important. So it'll no longer be based on like who clicked the button, right, in the traditional sense of purchase, but on who actually cryptographically signed that mandate, right? So the shift makes trust, security, and that transparency the most valuable commodities in the agentic economy.
Great. That's a great angle to look at this. But when these decisions are continuously optimized by agents in the background, does commerce become invisible? And what does that mean for the ownership, accountability, and trust? You have touched upon a few of those, but if you could clarify.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, I think this is the newest evolution that we are seeing, right? So I think everybody is jumping into building agentic commerce and making sure, like, hey, I want to ensure agents can find me, because when customers are shopping, even general Google, like there is something called as an AI mode, and you can go into AI mode and it will find the products, right? So right now we are kind of scratching the surface on product discoverability. There are very, very few purchase options, like, which can support like end to end, right? So it's kind of shifts that merchant of record, right, where we used to go into that merchant to make a purchase away from it, right? So that agentic autonomy and that trust. So there is that gap, that gulf between how does the merchant trust the agent that is trying to make a purchase, right? And also as a consumer, how do I trust the agent to make the right purchase, right? So that will keep evolving.
Great. Couldn't agree with you more on this, Sathya. So traditionally, CPG and retailers, they have always competed for human attention, right? But in an agentic world, they compete for algorithmic preference now. So how should CPG brands rethink GTM when agents, not humans, choose the product? So how do they reorient themselves?
Yeah, I think this goes back to the protocols, right? I think I can see like a 3-stage evolution, right? So we like, for example, if you look at the traditional SEO, right, that we all know, the search engine optimization was very human centric, right? So it was, the goal there was to get a human to click on that blue link, right, and land on your web, like basically bring them to your domain, right? That was the primary objective of SEO. It's kind of evolving into GEO, right? The generative engine optimization. So this is the transitional phase, in my opinion, right? And we are in it right now, right? So the goal here is to ensure that an AI model, an LLM, can actually synthesize a brand's information accurately, right, in the conversational, or the search summary, right, and then help navigate the journey. However, the end game is AEO, right, which is agent engine optimization. A personal AI agent doesn't really care about like your hero images on the website, right? It doesn't really care about the marketing ad banners that you have, like the promotions that you run. It will adapt to it in a different way, but it doesn't really care about the traditional UX, like the user experience, right? It cares about the structured data, the discoverability of the API, right? Like the compliance of the protocol, like all of these things, right? So it all depends on, can a consumer's agent ping your catalog, right, via protocols like UCP, verify the real-time inventory availability, and can it securely execute a transaction, right? So that's the new bar for discoverability.
Fascinating, and really interesting to note this, Satya. So, in this context, will retailers' power increase or weaken in the agentic ecosystem which is going to come? How do you look at it?
Great question. I think it's both, right? I'll explain how, but in my opinion, the retailer power is going to face like a massive stress test, right? In the traditional e-commerce model, retailers or QSRs own the entire consumer journey, right? They own the consumer, right? Whether it is on their website or their mobile application or even connected devices like Google Voice or Alexa, right? Like Google Home or Alexa. So as a consumer, you always have no other choice. You have to go to their domain, right? And it could be anything, and start and end your journey right there, right? So from discoverability to making a purchase, right, to making a return, whatever it could be, like, which could be a store kiosk, right? It could be a web, it could be a mobile app. But in the agentic world, that journey gets unbundled completely, right? So it's a new world. So discovery and decision making can happen completely outside the merchant's domain, right? So it happens inside the consumer's personal AI, reducing the merchant basically like to a headless API endpoint, right? Because of this, the power will significantly weaken for brands or retailers or QSRs who rely on sticky UI or impulse purchases, right? However, that power will dramatically increase, right, exponentially for brands that compete on pure utility, right, backend utility. So if you can offer unmatched logistics, right, like you have ironclad return policies that makes it easy, and real-time inventory accuracy, right, and supporting protocols like UCP, you become the default fulfillment engine for like millions of these autonomous personalized agents, right? So retailers are today finding that imminent need to shift from competing on experience to competing on execution, right? That's the way I'll put it.
Great. No, I think this is just driving this discussion into the technical side, which is probably a favorite zone for both of us, right? I think this is the perfect segue to shift our focus a bit more on the technicalities from the payment and trust layer standpoint. So my first question, which is not only my question, I believe, and probably this is the question for many of the viewers as well and beyond. So how do we trust an AI agent to spend money?
Oh, Yeah, so I think on the like we are getting into the payments side, right, which is like the critical piece of this whole commerce thing. So this is where the plumbing gets like fascinating, right? So we are moving from a world that verifies identity, right, to a world that must verify the authority, right? So like are my agents authorized to make these payments, right? So all these like a lot of payment networks are already building the infrastructure and like the layers for it, right? So I'll probably recollect like and recall a few of them, right? So Visa, right, has come up with their TAP, right, trusted agent protocol, for example, that uses like cryptographic signatures to prove an agent's intent to purchase, right, and its connection to a like a known customer, validity of the payment information and stuff like that. MasterCard is innovating with agentic tokens like through like you might have heard of the MasterCard Agent Pay, right, service. And Amex, like American Express, is also deeply integrating on the B2B side, right? B2B agents like on SAP's Concur. SAP Concur has like a Jewel, right, to automate corporate virtual card issuance and stuff. So zooming out, I think individual players like the payment networks are coming up with it. Like Stripe is partnering with OpenAI, right, on the ACP side, right, and Shopify has been working very closely with Google. But zooming out, I think we'll see open protocols, right? Like Google is leading AP2, like the agent's payment protocol, which is built for true autonomy using mandates, right? So if I tell my agent, hey, buy this flight option, if it drops below like $300 or something, so I sign a cryptographic mandate upfront, right? And then days later, when I'm sleeping, the agent can go execute that trade while I'm off. So trust is like no longer like a feeling. So it becomes like a mathematical certainty at that point.
Okay. So let's say something goes wrong. So whom to blame? Is it the user, platform, or the agent in this new ecosystem?
Yeah, I think what we will have is like how we have like credit score, right, for human users. So it'll be like we'll see the evolution, already seeing some of that in the cryptographic reputation system, right? So not like the FICO score that we have for human users, but we are already seeing as an industry rally around know your agent, like KYA kind of standards, right? It comes down to basically tracking like the agent's history, right? So did it successfully complete purchases in the past, right? Did it operate within its intended mandates, right, or the set guardrails? So agents with high trust score, if you will, meaning like a high rate of successful, legitimate transactions, right, will get frictionless and premium access to those retailers or whatever like QSRs, APIs. Those with low scores will be rate limited or like blocked entirely, right? So it's still like evolving pattern and platform, but in an agentic economy, basically at its fundamental level, the reliability is its credit score.
Yeah, right. So you have touched upon the credibility part of the agent. Um, but do you think that we need probably a credit score, as you mentioned, for the AI agents as well going forward?
Yeah, I think we will see some sort of that with KYA right coming up, right? I think we will start seeing that, right? So I think on the question of like who is actually liable, right? You have to look at like how traditional payment heavyweights are doing, right? So they are rolling out something like intelligent authorization via like the APIs, right, or VAPs. So when an AI agent actually executes a transaction at machine speed, it introduces like new fraud vectors, right? Like you need to use real time machine learning capabilities to ensure like the agent that is presenting the tokenized credentials is valid, secure, and authorized, right? So I think on the payments side itself, right, the scale and speed at which the transactions would happen right, is going to be at an extremely unprecedented rate. So I think if an agent operates within those secure cryptographic bounds, the user owns the transaction. So if the agent goes rogue, the liability shifts to the provider, like the payment provider. So it's kind of like an ecosystem or a mesh.
Great. That was so insightful. Now, if we look into the ecosystem and platform standpoint, right? So according to you, who will be the Amazon of agentic commerce?
Amazon of agentic commerce. That's a good term. I actually think the next Amazon might not be a single website or an app, right? It'll be the orchestrator, right, of the best A to A, like the agent to agent networks. So when my personal agent, right, or AI can ping a retailer's sales AI using like an A to A protocol to negotiate whatever discounts or promotions on my behalf, the marketplace, the middleman, right? So which is just the platforms like Amazon, right, gets intermediated, right? So the winner in that context will be the network, right, that provides the highest trust and the least amount of friction for those purchases.
Great, great. And we were talking about the CPG, retail, and the brands, the products, etc. So will these brands need their own AI agents going forward as well?
Without a doubt, I think brands will continue to deploy. So I think there are two ends of it, right? Like one, as a retailer or a brand, you enable yourselves to be agentic commerce compatible, so that people can find you from wherever they are coming from, right? Regardless of whether it is a traditional Google search or like they're chatting on Gemini, or GPT, Chat GPT or whatever, right? But it's also important for brands to deploy their own specialized agents, like a personalized agents to sit on their storefronts, right? So when I say storefronts, it could be like in their kiosks, right? Wherever they are located, or on their websites, right? Wherever the storefronts are, right? Acting as autonomous, basically concierge, right? That natively understand the protocols, right? And ready to shake hands and negotiate with inbound consumer agents. And I think this is where like Google is taking the lead with GCX, right? So Gemini Enterprise for Customer Experience, that offers retailers and brands to deploy first-party agents, right, that use complex reasoning, right, to understand the consumer intent. Because in the commerce world, we are seeing more and more long tail queries for searches. So customers are no longer searching for semantic like keywords, right? They're not doing that. They're just describing, hey, a project that they wanted to build, right? So it's probably like a few lines long, right? And so now the brands, retailers have to understand their intent, right, and what they are actually trying to do, and then it needs complex reasoning to understand that intent and provide high quality conversational support to deliver a very personalized service, whether it is from product discoverability to building out like a project, right, and then adding the SKUs that are required for the product, choosing the right products for the consumer, completing the transaction, right? So to answer your question, absolutely, I think it's inevitable that brands will have to build their own specialized agents that sit in their storefronts.
And I just wanted to ask another question, which is quite significant given the way this entire space is evolving. So, in this setup, do the marketplaces survive, or they get disintermediated?
I strongly believe the traditional marketplaces that we know today are going to face a massive disintermediation threat, right? Because the agents are gonna do that for you, right? Historically, a marketplace primary value was data aggregation, right? Putting all the products in one searchable place for the human eyes, right? Again, going back to the user experience, right? Hey, I don't want to go shop like 50 different places, right? And I go to Amazon, right, or Facebook Marketplace, so I can find, right, that right stuff, or eBay, right, to kind of go find that stuff. But an AI agent can actually do that, right? It can crawl the entire internet, right, with protocols like, for example, in UCP in milliseconds, right? And you set the intent and your mandates, and the agent can go find the right brand, the right supplier, and right retailer, and negotiate directly using A to A. So the marketplace middleman at that point, if essentially becomes like dead weight, right? So to survive, I think marketplaces will have to pivot from being like just discovery engines to enabling trust and becoming fulfillment engines, right? So competing on not just UX, but strictly on logistics. How can they process returns, right? How can they handle disputes, right? And dispute resolution, right? And post purchases, right? So that's the pivot that marketplaces will have to make.
That's a fabulous thought. With that, if we look at the future and what's coming next in this space, so do you think the apps will disappear in favor of personal agents?
Yeah, that's I in my opinion, I genuinely believe that we already have an explosion of web interfaces and mobile apps, right? So I genuinely believe that standalone apps will eventually collapse into some like background microservices, if you will, right? So we won't have to hop between 6 different travel sites and retail apps on our phones, right? We'll just have an ambient conversation with one agent, like a trusted agent that actually calls on those external services seamlessly, right? So I think it'll just get compressed, right? So the apps will certainly will collapse into background services.
Great. And I often get fascinated when this topic comes up to think what happens when the demand is no longer shaped by people. Because traditionally, I'm from economics background, right? So I've studied economics. We have studied the law of demand, supply, etc., then the price. So I just think that when the demand is no longer shaped by people, but by millions of AI agents acting together in real time. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think we are going to see like a hyper volatile machine speed markets, right? So imagine this: if thousands of agents, right, concurrently detect like a trend, right? Like all of a sudden some product gets, like, remember like the fidget spinners, like a couple of years ago became so popular, right? And they were like almost out, like you can't find them anywhere, right? So if imagine that's just users, right, who are trying to kind of go behind a trend, right? Or the 80 cups, right, or whatnot, right? So it's something will catch the trend. Imagine if thousands or even millions of agents that detect a trend and start executing microsecond latency or millisecond latency purchases, right? And they like the supply chains will go berserk, right? So it'll become very, very challenging. And also the dynamic pricing, right, of those will also have to shift. So I think the retailers or the brands who will win in the agentic era won't be the ones historically or traditionally the ones with the best UI or UX or storefronts, right? But the ones with the most resilient, which is like the fundamental thing, right? Regardless of how you operate in the commerce, even in traditional commerce, right? Not just e-commerce, supply chains, right, become like super important. Your inventory, right? Updation of that pricing, like dynamic pricing, right? Reporting that the stock SKUs, right? Those kind of things in real time to machine-driven intel and demand is where it'll go. So I think so the brands and retailers who kind of support that, have that fundamentals right, will eventually come out winning.
Great, that's a great thought. Good to see this direction. It's evolving. So before we let you go, Sathya, I have one more question for you from my end, obviously, and then probably we'll open it up for the question and answer from the audience, right? Sure. So the last question is this the end of the traditional digital marketing? What's your take?
I think it's probably the end of performance marketing as we know it, right? So you cannot serve, for example, like a retargeting ad banner to an AI agent, right? So the AI agent doesn't care. Like, it just doesn't really care. So I think marketing will split into like two major disciplines, right? With one towards the AEO, like the agent engine optimization, right? Like focused on ensuring a brand's data and APIs are perfectly formatted, right? And for agentic ingestion, right? On the contrary, we will also see like human-centric branding, right? So this is very important, right? Because I just don't want to give the feeling that, marketing is going to be dead, but it's actually going to be even more significant, and it has to move top of the funnel, right? Brand building, right? It all depends on the storytelling, right? And creating real world experiences as a brand that build deeper emotional resonance with human users, right? But because end of the day, the agents are a representative of a human being, right? So like the personalized agents. So you have to convince the human to instruct the mandate for the AI. For example, if I'm going to shop for running shoes, instead of setting a mandate like, hey, go buy me a running shoe within that budget, if I make that mandate as buy me running shoes in this budget, but make sure they are Nikes, right? So I'm kind of putting that mandate in there. So that's like the human-centric branding. So it has to move top funnel, right? So if you don't have that level of brand equity, I think you'll just become a commodity that will be traded by algorithms, basically.
Great answer. Great perspective. So as we wrap up, what stands out is that agentic commerce is not just a technology shift. It's a fundamental redefinition of how decisions are made, how brands compete, how trust is established. And we have started seeing that we are moving from clicks to autonomy, from customer experience to agentic experience, and possibly from human-driven markets to machine-coordinated ones, right? So probably if I can summarize the discussion and in that way, and for CPG and retail particularly, this is both an opportunity and a reset, right? Where success will depend on how well we adapt to a world where agents discover, decide, and transact on our behalf. So I think that's the key. So a big thank you to you, Sathya, for sharing such insightful perspective and helping us unpack what's coming next. And to all of you for being such an engaged audience. And now we'll open it up for the Q&A. So I can see a few questions that are coming to the Q&A section. And
I see there is a question from Aishwarya.
Yes, so maybe we can get started with that. So Aishwarya asks that, what do you think the immediate focus of retailers be? Building their own agents to deal with it, or working with e-commerce platforms for better visibility?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for like a vast majority of retailers, like the immediate focus must be working with like on the e-commerce platforms for like better visibility, right? And like I think that'll be evolution towards building customer agents, right? So but the immediate reality is shoppers are like already using AI to scrape like the platforms, right? For choosing the best products. So if your product data or the catalog isn't perfectly structured and integrated in the right places, right? I think again we are going back to the fundamentals of having the good catalog, right? Information with the right product data, like the SKUs, the description, right, and attributes for that. Um, so where the traffic already is coming from, so AI simply just can't see it, right, and like and recommend something. So I think while building like proprietary agents sounds like forward thinking, I think the underlying data, right, is very important, like to do the product catalog the right way. And it's like in short, like we have to, it's crawl, walk, run approach, right? So master the AI SEO, like the GEO game on the platform. I think to secure that revenue that's coming in from this agentic commerce world, right? And then if this will very quickly transition into building the customized agents, right? We spoke about GECX, for example, like the Gemini Enterprise customer experience engine. So that can be embedded within as personalized agents within the platform.
Great. Thanks, Sathya. We also have a question from Shobhit. Shobhit is asking, zero-click commerce sounds amazing for consumers, but how do retailers CPG maintain profitability without humans browsing?
Oh, yeah, I think that's a great question. I think so again, going back to the concept of like the agentic commerce, right? It's the profitability basically comes down to having the fundamentals right, right? Like the tension that is a central paradox of zero click commerce, right? It basically optimizes human efficiency, right? And the AI agent basically bypasses the digital storefront. So retailers basically lose the virtual end cap, right, and impulse checkout aisle. To maintain profitability, right, I think the strategy must shift from visual persuasion, right, that retailers have been trying to achieve, right, to algorithms, right, and relentless operational efficiency on the back end, right. I think they are like basically offsetting the loss of human browsing, right. I think two or three different ways, right. So like you need to do like the cater to the new impulse, right. Impulse buying isn't dead, it's just becoming hyper contextual, right. Instead of relying on visual pop-up on like you need to inject this as a logical add-on into a consumer agent's workflow, right. So if an agent purchases like for a camping trip, like a tent, then you need to know how to bundle that, right. Again, going back to that understanding the user's intent, right. And I think it's also shifting towards winning that invisible shelf, right. We spoke about GEO, right, the generative experience optimization. So profitability relies there heavily. I think, yeah, what is lost in those casual impulse revenue has to be recovered in the operations, right. So
Great, great. Yeah, I think that's so true. I see another question from Safiq. So Safiq is asking that how do loyalty programs evolve when this shopper delegates choices to an AI agent?
that's a great question, actually. So again, when we talk about the personalized human agents, so if you look at all these, that's why we are moving towards that protocol, right. So like the broader protocols, right. So if you look at UCP, for example, that basically can tie into these different things that the customers have, not just loyalty. So if you are offering a loyalty, right, so the agent needs to understand So it cannot be just the front end marketing thing, right? Like the user will have to do. So it'll have to be an AI driven entitlement, right? So the loyalty will shift from consumer UI to programmatic rule sets that the agent can ping a retailer, and a personalized agent will basically understand that and can integrate into loyalty. Same applies for other things, like, for example, you like region based selling, right? Like, hey, I 3,000 stores, right? But I want to offer specific regions, right? How do you orchestrate that in the agentic context, right? So again, it integrates, it has to integrate with that, right? So we are already seeing the protocols evolving there. Same applies to coupons, for example, right? Like, I have specialized coupons for loyal consumers, right? Or repeat consumers, for example. So I think it'll become very structured, right? And it'll become logged in. So AI agents will become frictionless at that point once it starts executing. So at this point, we just spoke about discoverability, right? Making that, adding things into your cart, making that purchase. But there are other aspects into that commerce experience, like as Safik mentioned, like the loyalty, or repeat purchases, or one-off discounts and things like that you'll have to drop in.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. I think there will be many analysis, and we will be watchful that how it is evolving, of course. I see a question from Urvashi. How should CPG brands build agent appeal when humans are not the decision makers anymore? What metrics replace traditional brand lift?
Yeah, I think CPG has traditionally. This is a great question, by the way, right? On the CPG side, um, CPG has always been trying to gain visibility into that last mile consumer journey, right? And they have been, for the most part, dependent on retailers, right, to kind of get that visibility. And you see that with a lot of these CPG brands like P&G and players like that. So the agentic commerce will be huge for that brand value, right? So instead of, for instance, like one example is the marketing function that has to move up funnel, right, on creating genuine demand, brand trust, and invest heavily. The CPG brands will have to heavily invest in building the brand equity, right, and real world experiences, right? So brand value becomes more important than ever, and as it translates into like a programmable directive for an agent. So you could argue the same for retailers as well, but that's where you know and from a KPI perspective, um, I think we'll start seeing things like the entity presence, right, or like what's the agentic conversion rates, right, and like LLM visibility, right, so things like that. Um, Takes hold, and the traditional brand lift is kind of fading.
Great. Great, Satya. Thanks for that. And maybe we can take a few more questions, Satya, if it is okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I see a question from Bhaskar. So Bhaskar is asking which payment protocols like AP2, TAP, MPP, Agent Pay show most enterprise traction, and what's the biggest adoption barrier?
Yeah, I think right now it's kind of it's all over the place, right? So right now we have some very proprietary protocols that are evolving, right? And the bigger players, like the payment providers like Visa's, Tap, or we are also seeing MPP kind of evolving, right? Machine payments protocol, right? And Mastercard's Agent Pay, right? And also we are seeing more um, technology, like a protocol aware things, like Google's AP2, right, and like Stripe's MPP, right. So Stripe was partnering with OpenAI on ACP, but very very recently, like in the last few weeks, we are seeing the Stripe just launched MPP, right. So I think it all goes towards that. I think it's a very specific operational use case, right. So I'll take a perspective on this, like Google's AP2, like AP2. So we are it's winning the retail procurement space, right? So this it all becomes like a consortium, right? It all depends on that critical mass of how many payment providers and partners that are adopting that. So it basically focuses on the trust layer. So it uses mandates like cryptographic signatures to prove the agent has permission to execute specific high value transactions. And there is also kind of big specific protocols like MPP, for example, right? It's, in my opinion, it's focusing on high frequency, low value transaction space, right? Where if you are leveraging MPP, there is a per API call charge, right? Or a session mechanism, right? So the AI agent basically pre-funds a session once, allowing payments to move forward without friction, right? So there are those kind of protocols. And there are, as I mentioned earlier, there are also the largest payment providers like Visa, Master, and Amex. Like they are kind of focusing on the identity layer, if you will, right? So they are leveraging the tokenized network to issue like verifiable credentials, right? This is basically to help the merchants, right? So if you're a merchant of record, how do you trust a specific, like a Visa payment that is being presented to you, right? So and how do you differentiate between like a well qualified agent to a malicious bot? So I think ultimately it won't be a single protocol, and we are still seeing that evolution. So we are preparing for a layered stack, right? And it needs to be cohesive, right? So you need to have identity verification, the trust verification, right? The legal authorization mandate, right? And the machine to machine settlement, how it happens. So yeah, it'll evolve.
Right. And I see another question from Shruti. So Shruti asks, does zero-click commerce has a risk of creating an echo chamber and will be difficult for new business retailers to come up? So basically, will it act as a barrier for the new business to come up? So that's the question Shruti is asking.
Oh, okay. Okay. I think it's an interesting question, but I think it's the opposite, right? I think it won't be tough because you'll be building for agentic commerce, right? So I think it is the greatest threat to that zero click commerce, right? So AI models inherently like optimize for most statistically proven answers, right? So they basically recommend established high value brands like legacy brands. So by removing that human in the loop, the chance that a shopper scrolls past the first page and stumbles upon an unknown retailer is very slim, right? So I think it's the barrier to entry is no longer who has like the biggest advertising budget, right? Or like I think, but who has like the tightest underlying data and then the supporting processes behind the scenes, right? So I think if a new business like a retailer that's like treats its API as like its primary storefront, and then I think they can completely bypass the historical echo chamber.
Right. And maybe Sathya, the last question we will take for today. I see a question from Anand. So Anand is asking what proprietary data or structural advantage will determine which companies dominate agentic commerce. So that's his question.
Yeah. I think this is fundamental, right? I think we are again going back to the fundamentals. So again, we talk a lot about LLM models and stuff, right? And in the AI world, but agentic commerce, it won't be determined by who has like the biggest audience or like leverages the smartest model. I think it'll be determined by real-time decision infrastructure, right? So in a world where like the agents will execute like millions of transactions in milliseconds, right? So the so-called moat is no longer like the brand's emotional resonance, but it's like computational, like, reliability, right? That it serves. I think the models will be the brain. So I'm not saying you don't care about the model, but you still need the right model. But the distribution, right, provides you the reach, right? So and your platform like gives you the ability to play in that, right? So companies that basically dominate like will transform their business logic into machine readable, right, real time, agent accessible, and ensure trust, right, more than appealing with advertising. So
Yep, great. So, Satya, it was so interesting, so insightful. And again, thanks a lot for your time and sharing your experience and perspective with all of us. We hope to have you in the future Bodhi sessions as well. But thank you so much. And thanks all of you who have joined and for your very valid and pertinent questions. Thanks to you.
absolutely, really enjoyed this discussion. A lot of intriguing questions, and I think I learned quite a few as well on like how everybody is thinking. And thank you so much for hosting, and fantastic session. Really enjoyed the discussion.